The sun was setting as Lily walked out of the small art gallery, clutching her rejection letter. Her paintings, which she had poured her heart into for months, weren't the right fit for their upcoming show. She tucked the letter into her worn jean jacket and tried not to cry. This wasn't just an artistic setback, it was a financial disaster. The gallery job she'd been counting on to pay next month's rent had gone to someone with more experience. Lily checked her wallet as she walked. Down the busy street, $5. That was all she had left until her next paycheck from the elementary school where she taught art part-time. $5 to last 3 more days. She should save it for bus fare, or maybe a box of pasta that could stretch into several meals. Her stomach growled, reminding her that she'd been too nervous to eat breakfast before her gallery meeting. A small deli on the corner caught her eye, its window steamy and inviting against the crisp autumn air. Maybe just a cup of soup, she thought, something warm to lift her spirits before the long walk home. As she approached the deli, she noticed a man standing at the counter, his shoulders slumped in a way that looked all too familiar. He wore a navy blue jacket with patches on the elbows and carried a guitar case covered in stickers from various music venues. The cashier was handing back a credit card, shaking her head. "I'm sorry, sir. It's been declined again," the cashier said, not unkindly. "Would you like to try another card?" The man patted his pockets and sighed. "No, that's the only one I have. I'm sorry for the trouble." He started to turn away from the sandwich that sat wrapped on the counter. Lily recognized the look on his face, the same mix of embarrassment and hunger she'd felt many times before. Without thinking, she stepped forward. "Wait," she called out. "I'll get it." Both the man and the cashier turned to look at her. The man's eyes, warm brown and tired around the edges, widened in surprise. "You don't have to do that," he said quietly. "I'm fine, really." "I want to," Lily replied, already pulling out her $5 bill. She handed it to the cashier. "Is this enough for his sandwich?" The cashier nodded. "It's exactly enough with tax." The man looked at Lily with a mixture of gratitude and discomfort. "Thank you, but what about you? Aren't you getting something?" Lily shrugged and managed a smile. "I'm not that hungry," she lied, just as her stomach betrayed her with a loud growl. A small, genuine smile broke across the man's face, lighting up his features. "Sounds like your stomach disagrees." He reached for the sandwich. "Look, why don't we share it? I can't take your last money and leave you with nothing." Before Lily could protest, he had already unwrapped the sandwich and broken it in half, offering her the larger portion. Something about his gentle insistence made it impossible to refuse. They found a small table by the window. The late afternoon light caught the dust motes floating between them as they sat down. "I'm David," he said, extending his hand. "Lily," she replied, shaking it. His hand was calloused in a way that matched the guitar case leaning against his chair. "So, Lily," David said between bites, "not many people would give their last $5 to a stranger. Either you're incredibly kind or incredibly foolish." His tone was light, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "Maybe a bit of both," she admitted. "My mom always said kindness matters more than money. Though, to be honest, right now I could use a little more of both." David laughed, a rich sound that filled the small space between them. "I hear that. Today was supposed to be a turning point. Had an audition at the River Street Music Hall. The equipment failed halfway through. Couldn't even finish my set. That's awful." Lily sympathized. "I just got rejected from an art exhibition, and the job that came with it." "An artist, huh?" David looked at her with new interest. "What's your medium?" "Watercolors mostly. I teach art at Pine Elementary 3 days a week, but I've been trying to get my own work into galleries." She picked at the bread crust. "Not much luck so far." "I'd like to see your work sometime," David said, and something in his voice made her believe he genuinely meant it. "What about you? Are you just starting out as a musician?" Lily asked. David shook his head. "Been playing for years. Had some success with a band a while back, but things fell apart. Been solo ever since. Last month, someone broke into my apartment and took most of my equipment. Been trying to rebuild 1 gig at a time." Lily felt a surge of empathy. That's terrible. Is that why your card? Yeah. David nodded, looking down. Insurance is taking forever. Between that and some medical bills from last year, things are tight, but I'll bounce back, always do. They continued sharing pieces of their lives along with the sandwich. David told her about growing up in a small town 3 hours away, how his grandfather had taught him to play guitar on an old instrument that barely stayed in tune. Lily shared stories about her students and their unfiltered enthusiasm for splashing paint everywhere but the paper. Time passed quickly, and when they finally stepped outside, the street lamps were glowing against the darkening sky. Which way? Are you headed? David asked. West Hill, Lily replied. It's about a 40-minute walk. David frowned. That's a long way. Do you want me to call you a ride? Lily shook her head, smiling. Can't afford it. The walk will do me good. Give me time to think. I'm playing at a coffee shop near there on Friday night, David said, suddenly seeming almost shy. It doesn't pay much, but they let the performers have free coffee. If you wanted to come, I'd like that, Lily said, surprised by how much she meant it. He wrote down the name of the coffee shop and the time on a napkin from the deli. Their fingers brushed as he handed it to her, and Lily felt an unexpected warmth spread through her chest. Thank you again for the sandwich, David said. Not just for the food, but for the reminder that there are still good people out there. Thank you for sharing it with me, Lily replied. It tasted better that way. They stood there for a moment, neither quite ready to walk away. A city bus rumbled past, breaking the spell. I should go, Lily said finally. Good luck with your music. Good luck with your art, David replied. And Lily, next time the meal's on me. As they turned in opposite directions, Lily clutched the napkin with the coffee shop address. The day that had started so terribly had somehow ended with an unexpected connection. She still had no job prospects, no money, and no idea how she would make rent. But somehow those problems didn't seem quite as overwhelming as they had before. What she didn't know, as she walked home through the gathering darkness, was that the simple act of buying a sandwich would change the course of her life. David watched her go, the memory of her kindness warming him more than the food had. Neither realized that this chance meeting was just the beginning of their story, a story that started with a $5 sandwich and a shared moment of humanity in a world that often felt cold and indifferent. 2 weeks passed since the day, at the deli, Lily had pinned the napkin with the coffee shop address to her refrigerator, but hadn't gone to see David play. That Friday night, an unexpected call from the elementary school principal had thrown her evening plans into chaos. 3 of her students' paintings had been selected for a district-wide showcase, and she'd spent the night helping them prepare their work for display. She'd thought about David often, wondering if he'd waited for her, if he'd noticed her absence. Several times she'd picked up her phone to search for the coffee shop's number, wanting to explain, but then set it down again. What was there to explain? They were strangers who had shared a sandwich. Nothing more. Life moved forward in its relentless way. Lily took on extra tutoring jobs on weekends, teaching art to children whose parents could afford private lessons. The irony wasn't lost on her, struggling to make ends meet while helping privileged kids develop the skills she couldn't use to support herself. On a chilly Tuesday afternoon, Lily stood before a classroom of 3rd graders, demonstrating how to mix watercolors to create the perfect autumn leaf. As the children bent over their papers, tongues sticking out in concentration, the principal appeared at the classroom door. Ms. Chen, could I speak with you for a moment? She asked, her expression giving nothing away. Lily's heart sank. Budget cuts had been rumored for weeks. Was this the day she'd lose even this part-time position? Keep working on your leaves, Lily told her students. I'll be right back. In the hallway, the principal smiled. A good sign, Lily hoped. The community center on Maple Street called, she said. They're starting an after-school arts program 3 days a week. They asked if we could recommend a teacher. I thought of you immediately. Lily felt a flutter of hope. Is it a paid position? Yes. And if you combined it with your hours here, It would be nearly full-time work. Not a fortune, but stable. For the first time in months, Lily felt the tight knot of financial worry begin to loosen. That sounds perfect. Thank you for thinking of me. Don't thank me yet, the principal laughed. The program starts tomorrow. They need someone right away. The next day, Lily arrived at the community center with a box of supplies and a notebook, full of lesson plans. The center was housed in an old brick building that had once been a library. Inside, the space had been transformed with bright paint and comfortable furniture, but signs of wear were everywhere. Scuffed floors, patched, walls, chairs that didn't quite match. A woman with silver-streaked hair introduced herself as Gwen, the center's director. "We're so grateful you could start on short notice," she said, leading Lily through a maze of rooms. "The kids are excited. Many of them don't have art classes at their schools anymore." "I'm happy to be here," Lily replied, meaning it. "Where will I be teaching?" "We've set up the back room for you." Gwen pushed open a door to reveal a large space with tables arranged in a semicircle. Windows along one wall let in streams of natural light. "It's not fancy, but it's perfect," Lily said, already imagining the possibilities. As she unpacked her supplies, Lily heard music drifting down the hallway, a guitar being played with, skillful fingers accompanied by a warm voice that seemed oddly familiar. She paused, listening to the melody that wound its way through the building. Later, as children filed in for her first class, Lily caught glimpses of other activities happening throughout the center. A cooking class in the kitchen, a homework help group in the main room, and somewhere, the musician was still playing, now surrounded by teenagers who occasionally joined in with their own voices. The afternoon flew by in a blur of introductions, paint-splattered fingers and the pure joy of watching children discover their creative abilities. When the last student had left, proudly carrying a still damp watercolor, Lily began cleaning up the art room. "Looks like they had fun," a voice said from the doorway. Lily turned, a paintbrush in one hand, and a cup of murky water in the other. David stood leaning against the doorframe, his guitar case slung over his shoulder. "It's you," she said, surprise making her voice higher than normal. "What are you doing here?" "I teach music on Wednesdays and Fridays," he said, stepping into the room. "Have been for a couple months now. The question is, what are you doing here?" "This is new." Lily set down the water cup. "I just started today, teaching art after school." David smiled, the same warm smile she remembered from the deli. "So we're colleagues now." He glanced at the paintbrushes soaking in jars. "Need help cleaning up?" They worked side by side, falling into an easy rhythm. David told her about his music program at the center, how he was teaching kids who couldn't afford instruments or lessons. The center got a grant for some basic equipment. He explained. "Nothing fancy, but enough to get them started. You should hear some of these kids, raw talent that just needs a chance." Lily nodded, understanding completely. That's why places like this are so important. For some kids, this might be their only opportunity to explore art or music. "Speaking of opportunities," David said, his tone shifting slightly. "You never came to the coffee shop." Lily felt her cheeks warm. "I'm sorry about that. There was a school event with my students. I should have found a way to let you know." David waved away her apology. "No need to be sorry. We barely knew each other. I just wondered if I'd imagined our connection." The directness of his words caught Lily off guard. "You didn't imagine it," she said quietly. Their eyes met across the table they were wiping down, and something unspoken passed between them. The moment was broken by Gwen poking her head into the room. "You two met. Wonderful. David, would you mind showing Lily how the supply closet works? The lock sticks sometimes." As they walked down the hallway, David asked, "Have you had dinner yet?" Lily shook her head. "I came straight from the elementary school. There's a small restaurant around the corner. Nothing fancy, but the food is good. My treat, remember? I owe you a meal." An hour later, they sat across from each other at a tiny table in a family-owned Thai restaurant. Over plates of noodles and vegetables, they filled in the gaps of the past 2 weeks. David had picked up a few more gigs, including a regular weekend spot at a local hotel lobby. Lily told him about her students' art showcase and her ongoing search for gallery opportunities. "I'm working on a new series," she said, twirling noodles around her fork. "Watercolor cityscapes, but focusing on the overlooked corners, laundromats, bus stops, corner stores, places where people's lives intersect in small but meaningful ways." "Like delis where strangers share sandwiches?" David asked with a smile. Lily laughed. "Exactly like that." As they walked back to the community center where they'd both parked, the evening air was cool against their skin. Street lamps cast pools of golden light on the sidewalk. "I'm glad we ran into each other again," David said, "though I'm beginning to think it wasn't entirely coincidence." "What do you mean?" "The universe seems to have a plan. Of all the community centers in the city, we both end up at this one." Lily smiled. "Maybe we were meant to be colleagues." "Maybe we were meant to be more than colleagues," David replied, his voice soft but certain. He reached for her hand, his fingers warm against hers. Lily felt her heart skip in a way that both thrilled and frightened her. They stood there under the street lamp, two artists trying to make their way in a difficult world, connected by a simple act of kindness that had somehow led them back to each other. "I'd like to see your paintings sometime," David said. "The real ones, not just what you describe." "I'd like to hear your music," Lily replied. "The songs you write, not just what you teach." As they said goodnight in the parking lot, promises of next times hanging in the air between them, Lily couldn't help but think about how differently her day had turned out than she'd expected. That morning, she'd been worried about making rent and finding steady work. Now she had a new job, a potential friend, and perhaps something more. What she didn't know then was that the community center would become the canvas on which their relationship would develop, brushstroke by brushstroke, note by note, creating something neither could have created alone. Spring arrived with bursts of color that transformed the city. 3 months had passed since Lily and David had reconnected at the community center, and in that time, a friendship had blossomed between them. They settled into a comfortable routine, sharing lunch breaks between classes, helping each other, set up and clean up their respective rooms, and occasionally grabbing dinner after work. Lily's art classes had become wildly popular. What started as a small group had grown to capacity, with a waiting list of eager children. Her classroom walls were covered with their creations, bright, fearless expressions of young imaginations set free. David's music program had flourished too. The shy teenagers who had barely spoken during his first classes now filled the center, with melodies of their own creation. He'd managed to secure donations of used instruments, which meant more students could take them home to practice. It was Gwen who first suggested the idea of a combined showcase. "The center needs to raise money for summer programs," she explained one afternoon as Lily, David, and several other teachers gathered in the break room. "I was thinking we could host an event. Art displays, musical performances, the works. Show the community what these kids have accomplished." Lily and David exchanged glances across the table. They'd been working separately, each in their own creative world. A collaboration would mean spending even more time together, a prospect that made Lily's heart beat a little faster. "I think it's a great idea," David said, his eyes still on Lily. "What do you think?" "My students would love it," she agreed, "and it would be good experience for them to display their work publicly." "Wonderful." Gwen clapped her hands together. "The event is in 3 weeks. I'll leave you two to work out the details." That evening, they stayed late at the center, sitting cross-legged on the floor of Lily's art room with notepads and calendars spread around them. "If we use the main hall for the art display," Lily said, sketching a rough floor plan, "we could set up a small stage at one end for the musical performances." David nodded, leaning in to look at her drawing. "We could arrange it so people move through the art first, then gather for the music. A journey from visual to auditory." "I like that," Lily smiled. "Speaking of journeys, how are the kids doing? With that new song you've been teaching them?" "They're getting there," David laughed. "More enthusiasm than precision at this point, but that's half the charm." Their planning session stretched into the night. They ordered pizza and ate it straight, from the box, trading ideas and stories as they worked. When Lily mentioned needing display boards for the artwork, David offered to build them. My dad was a carpenter, he explained. Taught me enough to be dangerous with a hammer. A musician and a carpenter, Lily teased. Is there anything you can't do? David's expression softened. Plenty of things. Can't paint like you? Can't make a souffle? Can't figure out why it took a chance meeting in a deli for us to find each other. The air between them changed, charged with something neither had put into words yet. Lily looked down at her notepad, suddenly aware of how close they were sitting, how natural it felt to be alone with him in the quiet building. I've been meaning to ask you something, David said, his voice lower now. Would you want to get dinner sometime? Not take out pizza on the floor, a real dinner, just the two of us. Lily looked up to find his eyes on her, warm and hopeful. Are you asking me on a date, David Taylor? Yes, he said simply. I am. She smiled, a flutter of excitement in her chest. I'd like that very much. The next 3 weeks were a whirlwind of preparation. By day, they taught their regular classes. By evening, they worked side by side on the showcase, David building display stands in the center's small workshop, while Lily designed posters and programs. On weekends, they met for coffee that turned into lunch that turned into entire afternoons spent together. Their first official date was a simple dinner at a neighborhood restaurant, but there was nothing simple about the way Lily felt, sitting across from David, seeing him in a light beyond their work relationship. He wore a blue button-down shirt that brought out the rich brown of his eyes, and he'd brought her a single yellow tulip, her favorite flower, though she couldn't remember telling him that. My mother loved tulips, she said, twirling the stem between her fingers. She said they were honest flowers, no overwhelming fragrance, no fancy petals, just pure color and grace. She sounds like a wise woman, David said. You talk about her in the past tense. Lily nodded. She died 5 years ago. Cancer. My dad's still around, but he moved to Arizona after she passed. Said he couldn't bear the cold winters without her. David reached across the table to take her hand. I'm sorry about your mom and about your dad being so far away. What about your parents? Lily asked. Both gone, David said quietly. Dad had a heart attack when I was in college. Mom followed a few years later. It's been just me for a while now. And your music, Lily added. David smiled. Yes, and now you. The week before the showcase, disaster struck. The musician who had agreed to headline the event, a local celebrity whose name would have drawn a crowd, canceled due to a scheduling conflict. Gwen was beside herself. All the publicity materials have already gone out, she lamented. What are we going to do? David and Lily sat in Gwen's cluttered office, exchanging concerned glances. The success of the fundraiser depended on a good turnout. I could perform, David offered. I have enough original material for a full set. Gwen looked doubtful. You're already coordinating your students' performances. That's a lot to take on. I can help with the coordination, Lily said quickly. Let David play, he's amazing, better than that local guy anyway. David shot her a grateful look. We can make this work, Gwen. The kids have practiced so hard. We can't let them down. Reluctantly, Gwen agreed. That night, as they left the center, David pulled Lily into a spontaneous hug. Thank you for believing in me. He whispered against her hair. Always, she replied, the word feeling like a promise. The night of the showcase arrived with perfect spring weather, warm enough for the center's doors to be propped open, letting the evening breeze carry the sounds of laughter and music into the neighborhood. Lily stood at the entrance, greeting guests and directing them toward the art displays. She wore a dress patterned with watercolor-like splashes of blue and green, her hair pinned up with a few strands framing her face. The turnout exceeded their expectations. Parents, neighbors, and community members filled the main hall, moving slowly through the exhibit of student artwork. Lily had arranged the pieces thoughtfully, grouping them by theme rather than by artist, creating a narrative that flowed from one display to the next. At the far end of the hall, David was doing sound checks with his students, who buzzed with nervous energy. He caught Lily's eye across the room and smiled. a private moment in the midst of the crowd. As the music portion of the evening began, Lily found a spot along the wall where she could watch. David's students performed first, their young voices and developing skills touching in their earnestness. The audience responded with enthusiastic applause, recognizing the courage it took for these children to share their talents. Then it was David's turn. He stepped onto the small stage with just his guitar and a microphone. The chatter in the room died down as he adjusted the mic. "Thank you all for coming tonight," he began. "These kids have worked incredibly hard, and your support means everything to them and to the center." He strummed a few chords, settling into the moment. "I'd like to play some original songs for you. The first one is called $5. It's about how the smallest acts of kindness can change the course of our lives." Lily felt her breath catch. She hadn't known he'd written a song about their meeting. David's voice filled the room, rich and soulful, as he sang about empty pockets and full hearts, about hunger and connection, about seeing someone truly in a world that often looks away. His eyes found hers as he sang the chorus, and Lily felt tears well up, remembering that day at the deli that now seemed both long ago and just yesterday. When the song ended, the room erupted in applause. David played several more songs, each one showcasing his talent as both a musician and a storyteller. By the end of his set, the audience was on their feet, and Gwen was beaming from the back of the room. As people began to leave, many stopped, to talk with the young artists and musicians, to congratulate Lily and David on the successful event. Donations poured in, more than enough to fund the summer programs. It was nearly midnight when they finally finished cleaning up. The center was quiet now. The excitement of the evening settled into a peaceful stillness. David found Lily in her classroom, where she was carefully storing artwork that would be returned to students the next day. "That was incredible," she said when she saw him. "Your music, the kids, all of it." "We make a good team," David replied, leaning against the doorframe. "And that song about our meeting," Lily finished for him. "It was beautiful. You inspired it," he said simply. "You and your $5 and your big heart." He crossed the room to where she stood, taking her hands in his. "I've been thinking a lot about chance lately. How if you hadn't walked into that deli at that exact moment, if you hadn't offered to help a stranger, if we hadn't ended up working at the same center." "A lot of ifs," Lily agreed, her voice soft. "Too many to be just coincidence," David said. His hands moved to frame, her face gently. "I think we were always meant to find each other." When he kissed her, Lily felt as though pieces of a puzzle she hadn't known she was solving finally clicked into place. His lips were warm against hers, his touch reverent. She wound her arms around his neck, drawing him closer. They broke apart, breathless, foreheads touching. "I've been wanting to do that for a long time," David admitted. "Why did you wait?" Lily asked. "I wanted to be sure that this us was more than gratitude or coincidence." "And are you?" "Sure." David's smile was answer enough, but he said the words anyway. "More sure than I've ever been about anything." As they walked out of the center hand in hand, the spring night wrapped around them like a promise of new beginnings. Neither could have imagined months ago that a simple act of kindness would lead them here, to music and art and each other, to a connection that felt both brand new and somehow familiar, as if their hearts had known each other all along. Summer faded into fall, and fall gave way to winter. Lily and David's relationship deepened with each passing month. They fell into a comfortable rhythm, their separate lives gradually intertwining like melodies in a duet. On a snowy December evening, they sat together in Lily's small apartment, watching the flakes drift past her window. A painting of the deli where they'd first met hung on the wall, Lily's gift to David for his birthday. It captured not just the physical place, but somehow the feeling of that day. The warm light inside, contrasting with the gathering dusk outside. "I got some news today," David said, his fingers absently playing with Lily's hair as she leaned against him on the couch. Remember that music producer who came to the center's holiday concert last week? Lily nodded. The event had been a huge success, with David's students performing alongside him to a packed house. He called me this afternoon. He wants me to record some of my songs at his studio. Said he hasn't heard a voice like mine in years. Lily sat up, her eyes bright with excitement. David, that's amazing. This could be your big break. It's definitely an opportunity, he agreed, his expression a mix of excitement and hesitation. But there's a catch. The studio is in Nashville. I'd need to go there for at least 3 months to record and promote the album. The joy in Lily's heart dimmed slightly. 3 months? That's a long time to be apart. I know, David said, taking her hand. And if you think I shouldn't go, I won't. What we have here, the center, our students, us, it means everything to me. Lily was quiet for a moment, thinking about all David had been through, how hard he'd worked for a chance like this. She thought about his songs, how they deserved to be heard by more than just the people who happened to walk into a coffee shop or community center. You have to go, she said firmly. This is what you've been working toward. Your music matters, David. It should reach as many people as possible. What about us? He asked, his eyes searching hers. 3 months isn't forever, Lily said, trying to sound more confident than she felt. We'll talk every day. I'll come visit when I can get time off from the center. You're sure? David asked. Because I meant what I said. If you asked me to stay, I would. Lily touched his face gently. I would never ask you to give up this dream. That's not what love is about. It was the first time either of them had used that word, love. But it felt right, settling between them like a truth that had been there all along. David left for Nashville in January. The night before his departure, they had dinner at the Thai restaurant where they'd gone after their first day working together at the center. They tried to keep the conversation light, talking about his recording, plans and her new art series, but an undercurrent of sadness ran beneath their words. At Lily's door, David held her close, his face buried in her hair. I'm going to miss you so much, he whispered. I'll be right here when you get back, Lily promised, memorizing the feeling of his arms around her, the scent of his skin, the sound of his heartbeat against her ear. The first few weeks of their separation were harder than Lily had anticipated. She threw herself into her work at the center, developing new art programs and volunteering for additional responsibilities. In the evenings, she painted for hours, creating piece after piece for the solo exhibition a small gallery had finally offered her. David called every night, telling her about the recording sessions, the musicians he was working with, the songs that were coming to life in ways he'd never imagined. He sounded excited but tired, the days in the studio often stretching to 12 hours or more. The producer wants to change some of my lyrics, he told her one night, frustration evident in his voice. He says they're too personal, too specific, that they need to be more universal to appeal to a wider audience. Your songs are perfect the way they are, Lily said firmly. They connect with people because they're real, because they tell your story. That's what I tried to explain to him, David sighed. But he's been in this business for 30 years. Maybe he knows something I don't. Trust your instincts, Lily urged. Your voice. Not just the way you sing, but what you choose to say with your music. That's what makes you special. A month into their separation, Lily received an unexpected offer. The director of a prestigious art program in Chicago had seen her work at a small exhibition and wanted her to apply for a teaching position. It would mean leaving the community center, moving to a new city, but it also meant stability, recognition, and the chance to grow as both an artist and a teacher. The application deadline was just 2 weeks away. Lily stared at the email, her thoughts immediately turning to David. If he came back to find her gone, what would that mean for them? But if his career took off in Nashville, would he even return at all? That night, when David called, she couldn't bring herself to mention the opportunity. Instead, she listened as he excitedly told her about a breakthrough in the studio. I stood my ground about the lyrics, he said. Played the original version of $5 for the whole team. By the end, even the producer was convinced. He said sometimes the most personal stories make the most universal songs. I'm proud of you, Lily said, meaning it completely. For staying true to yourself. I couldn't have done it without you, David replied. Thinking about what you would say gave me the courage to speak up. After they hung up, Lily sat at her kitchen table, looking at the painting of the deli. The Chicago position would be a dream come true professionally, but the thought of being even further from David made her heart ache. The next morning, Lily woke to a text from David. Turn on your radio at 9 a.m. local station, surprise. Curious, she tuned in just in time to hear the DJ announce, and now, for the first time on radio, here's a new voice you're going to be hearing a lot more of. David Taylor with $5. Tears filled Lily's eyes as David's voice filled her apartment, singing their story for the world to hear. When the song ended, the DJ came back on. That was Nashville's newest sensation, David Taylor. His debut single, $5, is already climbing the independent charts, and his album drops next month. David, welcome to the show. Lily gasped as she heard David's speaking voice respond. Thanks for having me. So tell us the story behind this song, the DJ prompted. It's quite specific. Is it based on something that really happened? It is, David replied, and Lily could hear the smile in his voice. I was having one of the worst days of my life. My card was declined at this little deli, and I was about to walk away hungry when this amazing woman stepped up and paid for my sandwich with her last $5. Wow, talk about a random act of kindness, the DJ said. And did you ever see her again? I did, David said. As fate would have it, we ended up working at the same community arts center months later. She's an incredible watercolor artist. Actually, if it's okay, I'd like to say something to her. I know she's listening. Go right ahead, the DJ encouraged. Lily. David's voice was softer now, more intimate despite being broadcast across the airwaves. I know we said 3 months, but I can't wait that long to see you. I've talked to the producer and they're giving me a week off. I'm coming home tomorrow. There's something important I need to ask you. Lily's heart raced as the interview continued, but she barely registered the rest of David's words. He was coming home. Tomorrow. She spent the day in a flurry of activity, cleaning, her apartment, buying groceries, preparing for his arrival. She was so busy that she almost forgot to check her email until late afternoon, when she saw a new message from the Chicago art program, asking if she was still interested in applying. Lily stared at the screen, the decision suddenly crystal clear. She wrote a polite response thanking them for their interest but explaining that her current situation made a move impossible. As she hit send, she felt not disappointment, but relief. Her path was here, with her students at the center, with her growing reputation in the local art scene, and most importantly, with David. The next day, Lily waited at the airport, shifting nervously from foot to foot as passengers streamed through the arrival gate. And then suddenly there he was, looking tired but happy. His guitar case slung over his shoulder, his eyes scanning the crowd until they found her. They collided in the middle of the terminal, heedless of the people flowing around them. David lifted her off her feet, spinning her in a circle as she laughed and cried at the same time. I missed you so much, he murmured against her neck. I heard you on the radio, Lily said, pulling back to look at him. The song sounds amazing. They want to release it as the first single, David told her as they walked hand in hand toward the exit. It's already getting airplay on independent stations across the country. In the taxi back to Lily's apartment, David told her about the album's progress, the musicians he'd met, the possibilities that were opening up for his career, but there was something else beneath his words, an energy she couldn't quite identify. It wasn't until they were back in her apartment, sitting together on the couch with mugs of hot chocolate, that David finally took a deep breath and reached for her hand. I need to tell you something, he said, his expression serious. The producer wants me to move to Nashville permanently. He says that's where I need to be to really launch my career. Lily felt her heart sink. Oh, was all she could manage. But I told him I needed to talk to you first. David continued. Because my life isn't just about my music anymore. It's about us. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Lily's breath caught as he opened it to reveal a ring, a simple band with a small, perfect pearl. I know we haven't been together that long, David said, his voice steady despite the vulnerability in his eyes. But when you know, you know. And I knew that day in the deli, even if I couldn't admit it to myself then. You changed my life with that $5, Lily. You showed me that kindness still exists in this world, that connection is still possible. He slid off the couch, kneeling before her. I don't know what the future holds. Maybe I'll make it in Nashville, maybe I won't. But I do know that whatever happens, I want to face it with you. I love you, Lily Chen. Will you marry me? Lily looked at this man who had come into her life so unexpectedly. This man whose music touched souls, whose kindness matched her own, whose love had become as essential to her as breathing. Yes, she whispered. Then louder. Yes, I will marry you. As David slipped the ring onto her finger, Lily thought about the decision she'd made the day before, turning down the Chicago opportunity without regret. They would figure out the details later, whether they would split their time between cities, whether she would move to Nashville with him, whether they would stay right where they were. What mattered was that they would make those decisions together. David pulled her into his arms, his lips finding hers in a kiss that felt like coming home. Outside, snow began to fall again, dusting the city with fresh white powder. Inside, wrapped in each other's warmth, Lily and David created their own shelter against the cold, a space built on kindness, strengthened by music and art, and now promised to last a lifetime. 1 year had passed since that snowy evening when David proposed. The months had been filled with change, challenge, and growth as Lily and David navigated the complexities of building a life together while pursuing their separate artistic dreams. They had made the difficult decision to split their time between 2 cities, 4 days in Nashville, where David worked with his producer and performed at increasingly larger venues, and 3 days back home, where Lily continued teaching at the community center and developing her own art career. The arrangement wasn't perfect. The constant travel was exhausting, and they both felt the strain of maintaining connections in 2 places. But they were determined to make it work. On a bright June morning, Lily stood in the kitchen of their Nashville apartment, scrolling through emails on her phone while waiting for coffee to brew. David had left before dawn for an early radio interview, kissing her forehead as she mumbled a sleepy goodbye. An email from Gwen at the community center caught her attention. The subject line read, "Exciting news. Please call ASAP." Curious, Lily dialed Gwen's number. "Lily, I'm so glad you called." Gwen's voice was bubbling with excitement. "Remember that grant application we submitted last fall? The one for expanding arts education in underserved communities?" "Of course," Lily replied. "The grant would allow the center to hire more teachers, buy better supplies, and even renovate some of their aging facilities. We got it." Gwen practically shouted. "The full amount, and there's more. The foundation was so impressed with our proposal that they want to use our center as a model for other cities. They specifically mentioned your art program and David's music program as examples of excellence." Lily leaned against the counter, stunned. "That's incredible, Gwen. Congratulations." "There's one more thing," Gwen continued. "They're creating a new position, arts director for the entire network of centers they're planning to establish, full-time with a real salary and benefits. They asked if you'd be interested." "Me?" Lily's voice rose in surprise. "But I'm not even there full-time anymore." "They've seen your work, Lily. Both your art and your teaching. They know about your situation with David, too. The position would be based here but would involve traveling to help set up programs in other cities. It's perfect for someone like you who's already splitting time between 2 places." Lily's mind raced. This was the kind of opportunity she'd always dreamed of. Stable work in the arts that would allow her to make a real difference while still pursuing her own creative path. But it would mean shifting their careful balance, spending even more time apart from David just when his career was taking off. Can I think about it? She asked. Talk it over with David? Of course, Gwen said. But don't take too long. They need an answer by next week. After hanging up, Lily poured her coffee and walked to the small balcony that overlooked the city. Nashville sprawled before her, already humming with energy despite the early hour. She had grown to appreciate this place with its rich musical heritage and vibrant creative community. But it wasn't home. Not the way their first city was, with its familiar streets and the community center where their relationship had truly begun. David returned just after noon, his face flushed with excitement. You won't believe the interview, he said, dropping his guitar case by the door and joining her on the couch. They played $5 and 3 other tracks from the album. The phone lines lit up with listeners wanting to know where they could see me perform. Lily smiled, genuinely happy for him. That's wonderful, I'm so proud of you. David studied her face. Something's on your mind. What is it? She told him about Gwen's call, about the grant and the job offer. As she spoke, she watched his expression, trying to gauge his reaction. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. It sounds perfect for you, he said finally. You'd be amazing at it. But what about us? Lily asked. We're already stretched thin with all the back and forth. David took her hands in his. Remember what you told me when I got the Nashville opportunity? That you would never ask me to give up my dream. That's not what love is about. He smiled, softly. I feel the same way about you and this job. It's not just about the job, Lily admitted. I miss home. I miss the center, our friends there, the life we started building before all of this. David nodded slowly. I've been thinking about that too. Nashville has been good for my career, but... He hesitated. I've been offered a teaching position at the music conservatory back home. It would be steady work, good pay, and I'd still have time to perform and record. Lily stared at him in surprise. You never mentioned that. I just got the official offer yesterday. I was waiting for the right time to tell you. He squeezed her hands. I love making music, Lily, but I also love teaching it to kids who might not otherwise have the chance to learn. That's what got me through the hardest times in my life, sharing music with others. What about your album? The tour they've been planning? The album is finished. It releases next month. As for the tour, I can still do it, just with a home, base that's actually home. He smiled. I've spent enough time in Nashville to know that success here comes with a price. It's competitive, exhausting, and often lonely. I'm proud of what I've accomplished, but I don't need to live here full-time to keep making music that matters. Lily felt a weight lifting from her shoulders. Are you sure? I don't want you to regret giving up opportunities here. I'm not giving up anything that really matters, David said firmly. Besides, this arts director position of yours could open doors for both of us. A network of community centers means more places for me to perform, more students to teach. They spent the rest of the day talking through the details, making plans, imagining a future that suddenly seemed clearer than it had in months. That evening, David took her to dinner at an upscale restaurant overlooking the Cumberland River. He was dressed more formally than usual, in a crisp button-down shirt and slacks. Lily wore a simple blue dress that brought out the warmth in her eyes. What's the occasion? She asked as they were seated at a table with a spectacular view of the sunset over the water. 1 year since I asked you to marry me, David reminded her with a smile, and we still haven't set a date. Between the constant travel, David's recording schedule, and Lily's exhibitions, wedding planning had taken a back seat. They'd agreed to wait until life settled down, but somehow it never had. With everything that's happened today, maybe it's time to talk about that, Lily suggested. David reached across the table for her hand. Actually, I have something else in mind. After dinner, instead of calling a rideshare, David led her along the riverfront to a small park where a man stood, beside a vintage motorcycle with a sidecar. What's this? Lily laughed. Our chariot, David said with a grin. Don't worry. Joe here is a professional. He's going to take us somewhere special. The motorcycle ride was exhilarating. the warm summer air rushing past as they wound through the city streets and out into the countryside. As the urban landscape gave way to rolling hills and open fields, Lily felt a sense of freedom she hadn't experienced in months. They finally stopped at the top of a hill overlooking a valley where a small music festival was underway. Colorful, lights dotted the landscape, and the distant sound of music drifted up to them on the evening breeze. "I've been thinking," David said as they stood hand in hand, watching the scene below. "Why wait to get married? Why not do it now before we move back, before the new jobs start, before life gets complicated again?" Lily turned to him in surprise. "Now? As in, right now?" David laughed. "Well, maybe not this exact minute, but soon, next week. Small, simple, just us and a few close friends, at the community center where we found each other again." The idea was spontaneous, unconventional, and perfect. "Yes," Lily said, her heart light with certainty. "Let's do it." They called Gwen the next morning. She was thrilled about their decision to return home, and even more excited about hosting their wedding. "The center would be honored," she said. "And I know just the room, the one with all those windows where the light is beautiful in the evening." The following week was a whirlwind of activity. Lily accepted the arts director position, David confirmed his teaching role at the conservatory, and they began the process of untangling their Nashville life. In between packing boxes and making arrangements, they prepared for a wedding that was as simple as it was meaningful. Lily found a vintage dress in a small boutique, ivory lace with a tea-length skirt that swirled around her legs when she moved. David opted for a suit in deep blue, with a tie that matched Lily's favorite shade of watercolor paint. They asked a few of their students to participate. David's musicians would play during the ceremony, and Lily's young artists created decorations that transformed the community center's multi-purpose room into a space of beauty and joy. On the evening of their wedding, Lily stood in the art classroom, looking at herself in a full-length mirror that someone had brought in for the occasion. Her hair was adorned with small white flowers, and she carried a bouquet of tulips, yellow like the one David had given her on their first date. A knock at the door revealed Gwen, her eyes misty with emotion. "It's time, dear. Everyone's ready." Lily walked down the makeshift aisle. She saw not only their friends and colleagues, but also many of their students and their families. These were the people who had watched their relationship grow, who had supported their dreams, who had created a community around them when they needed it most. David waited at the front of the room, his expression a mix of awe and absolute certainty, as he watched her approach. Behind him, a large canvas stood covered with a cloth, something Lily couldn't recall being part of their simple decorations. The ceremony was brief but heartfelt. They exchanged vows they had written themselves, promises not only of love and fidelity, but of support for each other's dreams, of courage in the face of uncertainty, of kindness as the foundation of their life together. After they were pronounced, husband and wife. After the kiss that sealed their commitment, David led Lily to the covered canvas. "A wedding gift," he explained, "with help from some talented young artists." He pulled away the cloth to reveal a mural created by their students, a beautiful rendering of the city they called home, with the deli where they first met, the community center where they reconnected, and the Thai restaurant where they had shared so many meals. Woven throughout the scene were musical notes and splashes of watercolor, symbols of their separate arts united in one harmonious composition. At the bottom of the mural in careful lettering were the words, "From $5 to forever, the story of Lily and David." Lily's eyes filled with tears as she took in the details, the love and care evident in every brushstroke. "It's perfect," she whispered. "All of it." Later, as they danced together in the center of the room, surrounded by the people who mattered, most to them David leaned close to her ear. "No regrets?" he asked. "About the timing, about moving back, about any of it?" Lily looked up at him, at this man who had gone from stranger to husband in the span of 18 months, whose path had crossed hers because of a simple act of kindness on a day when they both needed it most. "Not a single one," she replied with absolute certainty. Some people spend their whole lives looking for their purpose. I found mine the day I spent my last $5 on a sandwich for you. David smiled, the same warm smile that had touched her heart that first day. And I found mine the moment you did. As the music played on and the community they had built celebrated around them, Lily and David held each other close, stepping forward together into a future neither could have imagined that day at the deli, a future built on kindness, strengthened by challenges overcome together, and rich with the promise of creative lives shared in perfect harmony.